You. All right, I'm going to make a case. Michael Jordan was not the greatest basketball player ever. I know I'll probably have people wanting to assassinate me, but I'm not saying that he's not good. I'm not saying that he's not great. I'm not saying that he doesn't belong on the Mount Rushmore. Okay, but I'm making this case why he's not all of that. Okay, so start off with college. He was on a national championship team, but he himself was not the leader of that team. It was really James Worthy. Okay, later on it became part of the Lakers and part of that massive legacy. Um, let's see here. The next thing is that it's just one of these things where you're kind of thinking, what is the ideal? Okay. Number two, he did have opponents who took him to the limit. He got swept by the Celtics. And I saw the one where, they always brag about, oh, he got 62 points against the Celtics. But yet the Celtics beat him. Now, this is one of the biggest issues when you kind of confront this. And I don't know if you can have somebody ranked as the best ever. Because basketball is a team sport. And you have to have skills with the team. What Michael Jordan had in the 80s was individual skills, but he couldn't make it to that higher level because he lacked something that Bird and Magic possessed. They were team players. Bird and Magic were considered the greatest passers of all time. I'm not saying that Michael Jordan couldn't pass the ball, but he'll never be considered one of the greatest passers of all time. Then, he'd also got beat in many streaks by Isaiah Thomas. And this ended up in a bad place. And this is where this will result to kind of be evidence of where there are flaws in his championship ethic. Because as we know that when it came to the Dream Team, the guy who bested him, Isaiah Thomas, was not allowed onto the Dream Team because Michael Jordan said, look, I'm not going to play if he's on. So, really just messed over Isaiah Thomas pretty bad on that. And in general, yes, the Detroit Pistons were hated for being overly aggressive, but that was a superior defense. And I think what's happened since is that the NBA shifted to an anti-defensive posture, and that ruins the game because you really you've altered it to where people look like they're better than those that gone before them, when really they've just had rules that fit them better. And something that goes along with this is that Jordan didn't get any championships until Scottie Pippen joined the team. So Scottie Pippen made up for a lot of Jordan's flaws. Whereas he didn't have that touch with the people. like Magic and Bird, who, really held a talent over their team and lifted up the teammates. Uh, with Jordan, it was the opposite. He did not lift up the teammates. He might have picked on them, but he didn't really fit that mold. So Scotty had to do that for him. Now, let's see here. A lot of people they had a lot of backlash because Scotty got mad of the way he was portrayed in The Last Dance. But even though there might be a lot of ego on both sides, a lot of people have to remember that, Scotty was a great athlete. And he took over the areas. He was the bad cop to Jordan's good cop. Jordan got away with so much because Pippen would take up the slack on those points. Now, during that period, not only did Jordan have an advantage now that he had Pippen on his team, but you had two major factors going into the 90s. Number one, his highest rivals were Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson gets HIV and he's out. Larry Bird is suffering from back damage and he's out. And Jordan gets a boost being on this U.S. Olympic Dream Team. And he asserts himself over the other two, and it gives him a great launch. But also, there is a lot of expansion teams. And when you have an expansion of the NBA, what you really have is a watering down. Because now you have so many more NBA players, and the talent is not quite as elite. So the 90s becomes a lot more easygoing than those mid to late 80s that Jordan never could conquer. So the expansion comes. Bird and Magic get out of the way. Now, also, there is idolatry and celebrity with Jordan. When I was doing a example of Hulk Hogan, a lot worked in the positive of Hulk Hogan as a great entertainer. Because pro wrestling, was understood as sports entertainment. In fact, Hogan saved the wrestling industry by guiding it into a sports entertainment format. If he hadn't, wrestling would have died. Kayfabe was insane. It may have had a good reputation for toughness, but at the end of the day, it was nuts. You were faking. And not only were you faking, but you'd run around town beating guys up to keep an illusion that what you did in the ring was real. So Hulk Hogan was rewarded for that entertainment side. But this doesn't work in basketball. If basketball is real, there cannot be any fakery. And so, when Jordan gets this reputation and he's got the Michael Jordan shoes and he's doing, movies like the Warner's Brothers movie and stuff. Sorry, it just popped it. So I've got ADD, so sometimes facts just like pop away from me all of a sudden. But yeah, when he's doing these movies and things, and he's on GQ, and he's just everywhere in the media, that helps his reputation, but it cannot count for his legitimacy because basketball is not built to be that much of a center of entertainment. It's supposed to be that he's the greatest to play the game. And so, that gives him an aura that's not legit. Well, then, let's see here. There are secret character flaws that Michael Jordan possessed. Now, some have made a big deal about him and charity. And I don't know if this was that he was not politically active, but, like me, I'm politically conservative, so, it's nobody wants us to be active. But, people were really getting after him about that. Recently I've seen stuff where he did give to charities, somewhere upwards of $30 million. Could it be that there was a period where he wasn't charitable? That could be. Or maybe not. Maybe giving to the charities that they didn't deem worthy. Like he bought a hospital or helped create a hospital, funded. I think that once you've gone there, you're okay. You don't have to. You're not forced to give to charity. If you are rich, it is wise that you do, although it's often seen as just political. Could that be the case? Could it be that Jordan's only giving out politics? Well, it would be uncharitable to put that accusation against him. Larry Bird, said this early on that he was impressed by Jordan giving to charity. That would have been in the mid to late 80s, so, once again, I'm not going to fault him there. But there are a lot of problems. He had, in his NBA relationships, he had a bad attitude. He would pick on his team. His style was to be kind of abusive. It was like Kerr. I forgot it was Steve Kerr, but a fellow on his team. He just, they started working together, and Jordan just eventually got mad and punched him in the face. Jordan's a little bit too old to, do that. He should be a professional. As people on his team doesn't need to get aggravated with and punch them in the face. It's not high school or middle school, really. Now there was a fella. I'm trying to remember him. A fellow who was on the Celtics. And this is just one of those. This is another ADD example. I've thought about this guy a lot, but I've just forgot his name at the moment. It was kind of like you had. Now I'm really just losing it. Okay, who we got? You got Larry Bird, and then you have that one tall white guy with long arms. And this is really horrible. I mean, I've known his name since I was like a kid. I'm just blanking out. But yeah, that guy. And then you had an African American fellow from Alabama. They nicknamed him the Chief. And he's what I'm thinking about. Anyway, yeah, so he was on the team in 1986 when Jordan went all out. And he personally did score 20 something points, and all the Celtics really band together, and they still defeated the Bulls. And so late in his career, he ends up joining the Chicago Bulls. Not for very long, but he does join the team. Well, Jordan's running around there and just picking on everybody. And, he's like, well, when I was at the Celtics, Larry Bird treated me nice. And Jordan said a snide remark to him. And he just yelled back, I ain't afraid of you. And he said, I was there in '86 and we whooped yo booty. yeah. Um, and so basically, but he had said, look, he didn't like the way Jordan would coach. And, it's a weird thing when you're at that level. The players can be coaches in and of themselves. I mean, they're full grown men. They know all the ins and outs of what they're doing. So, he had this hyper competitive thing about him. He ended up getting into a lot of trouble as a gambler. And it's even been rumored, and I think it should still say a rumor, even though a lot of people would say, no, you shouldn't say that. But, like, his father was murdered, and his constant gambling would get him in contact with a lot of mafia characters. And it is possible that there may have been some retribution. And I'll even say this, his whole thing about joining a baseball team, I wonder if he was not laying low. Because it could be that was more retribution. Whoever killed his father might have wanted to kill him too. So maybe he lay low for a year or two doing that stuff. But that is just speculation. People know the story where he pretended to be friends with Charles Barkley. And, in order to get an edge on him in the national championship, he bought him a $20,000 ring and smoothed things off with him. And lo and behold, Jordan does get the best of him in the national championship. And he was like, that was the whole point. I hated that fat effer. Not only that, but there was a story later. He really did have an abusive friendship with Charles Barkley. It's surprising just how much Barkley let him get away with. Because he was a much richer fella. Barkley wasn't hurting, but he couldn't hang. And so I think he decided to be friends with him because he was rolling so high. But Charles Barkley apparently made friends with a fellow who's mostly popular as a pro wrestler these days. Actually, he's retired, but I got him Mark Henry. And Mark Henry told a story that he had gotten to hang out with them. They had that Olympic dream team, and Mark Henry was an Olympic hopeful in powerlifting. Now, I might get that wrong because there's powerlifting, weightlifting. Henry did compete in both, but, regardless. But he was, a championship weightlifter. And so he was invited to a big party. Barkley invited him, and then Michael Jordan was there. And the first thing out of Michael Jordan's mouth is, who invited this fat effer? And, Mark Henry just told him, he said, this fat effer could snap your neck anytime you wanted to. And then Jordan kind of realized it's probably true. Jordan could always make a dunk. Well, Mark Henry is 400 pounds, but he could still dunk. But I don't think that Michael Jordan was ready to squat 900 pounds. Okay. Mark Henry was freakishly strong. They always called him the world's strongest man. He really could have squashed him like a bug. and um, but it was just this type of nature, this attitude. Some things are kind of freaky. Um, I think about some of the heroes I had as a kid in U of L and U of K, with Bradford Smith in U of L and Rex Chapman in the U of K. Both of these fellas, when they went to the NBA, had a game or two where they bested Michael Jordan. Both of them, after besting Michael Jordan, had a little meeting and they never played well again. There's other times where people, if they get a good day on Michael Jordan, just don't have good days after that. Muggsy Bogues, smallest player in the NBA, had a hot streak. He's doing really good. And they were taking on Chicago in a championship series. Jordan, right at the end, says, just gets into Muggsy's face and says, "Give it up, you effing midget." And suddenly Muggsy Bogues loses it, and he never plays well after that. Is it just the psychology of that one game, or is there another form of intimidation going on? I don't know. But there's just a series of things. Noted alcoholism, like drinking on a massive scale and stuff. You have to consider this. Should the greatest ever be a role model, and is he really being a role model? He could play one for the public, but there was a lot of these flaws. Then he retires in his peak, and he tries to set up a team, become a coach. Things don't work out, and he decides to go back to playing basketball for the Wizards. A couple good games, but generally, okay, he was just playing past his prime. I know a lot of people think longevity should be a big deal, but longevity can have as many curses as it has blessings. He ran his mouth at Kobe, and Kobe took him down. And so, if you look at these things, uh, Jordan, had special circumstances that really propelled him to the top. And, while he, has that feeling of the greatest basketball player ever, doesn't necessarily make him greatest ever. The three pointers, um, at the end of his career, he figured out how to do some. He wasn't exactly there for quite a while. Uh, as I said, he had to have help, and he had an easier league, and all these other things can add up too. Athletically, he was not as great as an athlete as Wilt Chamberlain. He's not going to be benching 600. Wilt could score 100 points without a 3-point rule. So without the aid of 3-pointers, he got 100 points. Jordan never got near 100 points. On an athletic level, I think Wilt was there. say he's the athletic goat. Jordan wasn't able to overcome Bird. Individually you could rack up more points, but when you look at their totals, all of a sudden Bird's a lot of the, making up for a lot of that with rebounds and passes and some other things. And, on a technical level, I don't think Bird has many physical attributes. And so he's making it up with basketball genius, as they like to say. So, Bird to me is the general or technical greatest. Jordan can still have a place in that conversation as the individually or solo greatest of all time. He is a high level defender. Lots of people respect his defensive ability. And he was an incredible scorer. I think that Kareem scored better than him, but there were a couple records that Jordan took from Kareem. And on average, he used to, 30s, the 40s, the 50 points a game. So he was an incredible scorer, beyond any doubt. There could be a lot of people better at certain levels. So he's always going to be at the highest of levels. He's always going to be on most everybody's Mount Rushmore. But the greatest of all time, I'm not going to give the nod to. Catch you later.